Hello, everyone. Welcome as you're entering the room.
Everybody's popping.
Hello.
I love it.
Thanks for making the time to join us this evening. My name is Michael. I'm the events coordinator and publicist at Annie Bloom's Books. For those of you who aren't familiar with the store, we're located in Portland, Oregon, in the heart of Multnomah Village. We have been around for 42 years now, and we are still going strong. Our store is now open in the last couple of weeks to limited browsing, just a few customers at a time, first come, first served, masks and social distancing required still. We are open weekdays from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and weekends from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Our website is always open. You can shop at annieblooms.com day and night. We offer curbside pickup, local delivery, and various shipping options. And I'm going to put in the URL here for the event where you can go and pick up both of the author's books. We would really appreciate that. I'm going to let some more people into the room here. Hello, newcomers. I was just introducing myself. I'm Michael. I'm the events coordinator, and you have come to a reading. I hope you're meant to be here. Good to see you. The URL in the chat that I just put up there that you guys can see, you can purchase both of the books there. And here comes Cindy. Hi, Cindy. Welcome. So we have some great events coming up after this one. In June, we got a Monday, June 7th, we have an Australian author, Donna Ward, for the US live stream launch of her memoir, She I Dare Not Name, A Spinster's Meditations on Life. She'll be joined by Portland author, Jackie Shannon Hollis, who's got a memoir called This Particular Happiness, A Childless Love Story. They'll discuss childlessness, writing, and spinsterhood. That was their own word. Tuesday, June 15th, we're gonna have Portland author Cindy Baldwin, another live stream launch for her middle grade novel, The Stars of Whistling Ridge. And she'll be reading with another middle grade author, Jamie Pacton. And 2 nights after that, on Thursday, this June 17th, Megan Galbraith will be in conversation with Portland author Liz Prado, who has a book about Hawaii and also happens to be my wife. But it's a really good book about Hawaii. So that ties into this event. It's called Volcanoes, Palm Trees, and Privilege. Tonight, we are delighted to be hosting Portland area mystery authors and current Hawaii person, Mary Keliikoa, and Portland resident, Angela M. Sanders. Sorry, someone originally told me Saunders and I got that in my head. Yes, we're delighted to be hosting those 2 authors. They're going to be reading and conversing, and at the end, there'll be a Q&A session. You're welcome to type questions into the chat, or you can ask in person at the end. So feel free to type those questions along the way, and I can read them to the authors at the end. Let me tell you about Mary's new book, Denied. Let me first admit another person into the room. Welcome, Lynn. Mary's Denied is the 2nd book in the gripping Kelly Pruitt mystery series, in which a grieving single mother inherits her late father's PI business. As you can imagine, Kelly Pruitt has a lot on her plate, working with clients at the detective agency, handling a difficult ex, and caring for her deaf daughter. But if motherhood taught her anything, it's that the best things in life are never easy. When a mommy-to-be hires Kelly to locate her estranged dad, Kelly is thankful for the straightforward missing persons case. But as she rummages through his trash in search of clues, she uncovers gambling debts to gangsters and a blood-soaked severed finger. Yikes. With her investigation no longer cut and dried, except for the finger, Kelly's hunt takes a deadly turn when her quarry is found driven off a cliff to his doom, and she'll need more than her cop boyfriend's help to expose the truth when the mob sends her a cease and desist notice with an explosive ending. Yikes. Again, can the determined detective take on the mafia and make it out alive? Good question. Let me tell you about Mary. Mary Keliikoa, for years, has worked as a legal secretary, giving her a front row seat on the legal maneuverings that take place every day. She loved the unfolding of case, from the first documents being run to the courthouse to preparing for trial. That love is one of the many reasons she gravitated to writing mystery and suspense. When not writing, Mary enjoys time in her Hawaii home, where she is now, with her husband of 29 years, or back home in Washington with the rest of the family, including their 2 fur kids. Hey, nice. Cooking up a gourmet meal, golfing, playing with one or all of their 10 grandchildren, strumming a tune on her ukulele, or fiddling on the piano that she's played since childhood, and loving life. What a wonderful and mysterious ride. Angela M. Sanders is also here. Her new book is Bait and Witch. They're all good puns on witch. Her book title's Josie Way loved working among the Library of Congress's leather-scented stacks until she uncovered corruption and made herself a target. As Wilfred, Oregon's new librarian, Josie can stay undercover until the case goes to court. But life in this little town isn't as subdued as she expected. The library, hosted in a Victorian mansion, is slated to be bulldozed. Still digesting the news that her safe haven is about to become scrap lumber, Josie discovers a body in the woods. Almost as shocking, Josie learns that she's descended from a long line of witches, and her powers have suddenly sprung to life. With help from a spoiled alley cat who just may be her familiar, Josie's thumbing through a catalog of suspects, hoping she can conjure a way to save her library and her life. Angela M. Sanders grew up in rural Northern California, building forts in the woods where she devoured Nancy Drew mysteries. Awesome. She earned degrees in economics and public administration, and in graduate school studied 6 months in Paris, sparking a lifelong interest in French culture. Let's admit another person here. In French culture. After 11 years as a congressional investigator, Angela realized she was more fascinated by the stories at the edges of her investigations, the decrepit exercise equipment in the ladies' room of a Czech oil company. That's a good detail. The curious number of framed photographs of a woman on a nuclear weapon official's desk, the stupendous speed by which a particular agriculture undersecretary inhaled chili dogs, then by the police policies she evaluated. She returned to the West Coast to explore the world and her imagination through magazine stories and fiction. Angela lives here in Portland, Oregon. So welcome everyone, Mary and Angela.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's so funny to hear the description of Bait and Witch because I didn't write it, the publisher did. And I remember looking at it, but hearing it's like, hey, you know, they did a pretty good job, whoever was writing that copy.
Oh, nice, good.
Yeah. Do you write your descriptions, Mary, or does your publisher do that?
You know, they ask for a suggestion. So, you know, so I draft something up for sure. And then they tweak it and usually go with what they want at the end of the day. But they ask usually that I start it. So
it's interesting. When I wrote for Berkeley Prime Crime, they wanted me to do it too. And this time I just like the book came and hey, somebody wrote something.
I want that. That would be nice. I would like that.
Yeah, it is nice. Well, before we start, so I want to talk to Mary because tonight is, I mean, this is a launch party for Denied, which is, I read it. I think I got up maybe to go to the bathroom at some point, but basically it was one of those kind of books that you pick up and you keep going and going and going till you get to the end. Super compelling read. So I thought that I just want to talk to Mary about what it is, what her writer's life is like, talk to her a little bit about the book, maybe get her to read little bits from the book. But before we start, I want to say that we have a little giveaway. So let's do a preview of the giveaway, then we can remind you again at the end. And Mary, do you want to tell what your part is?
Yes, so mine is, since I'm in Hawaii right now, for anyone who buys the book tonight through Annie Bloom's bookstore, I'm bringing back handmade koa wood bookmarks. I don't know if you can see them, but they're beautifully done by a gentleman up at Waimea, and his wife does all the burning of them and all the beading of them. And so they're very nice. And so for the first 15 or so books that are sold, you'll be getting a koa wood bookmark.
And these are books that are sold through annieblooms.com.
Yes, only.
Right. Okay. And so also, I know you have come here to listen to Mary and to learn about her PI book. But say you're saying, you know, this has been such a hard pandemic. And what I need is a witch librarian and a magic hat. If you buy Bait and Witch at Annie Bloom's, then I just got the advanced review copies of 7-Year Witch. These aren't going to be out until August 22nd. But for the first 3, or I'll even say 5, we'll go up to 5. For the first 5 of Bait and Witch that you buy at Annie Bloom's, you can get this one too. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. And anybody does, yeah.
Bait Witch is awesome. I am right to the very end, and I've been loving it. So Josie is fabulous.
Glad that you like her. So, okay, so Mary, you're in Hawaii. It's super nice in Portland. You are missing some good weather. But what's it like there?
Well, it's 85 and it's a little muggy and it's very windy today. So we live in the Waikoloa vicinity, and wind coming off of the volcano Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa area is really common. And so we have lots of wind right now, but it's still warm. It's gorgeous.
And how far are you from the beach? That's the other thing.
I can walk to the beach. I'm like 5 to 7 minutes from the beach. I can't see it from here, but I can walk right to it.
Okay, well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Okay, so when did you start writing, or when did you get the idea that you wanted to write books, novels?
Novels, yes. So I was a little bit of a late bloomer. So I didn't start writing until I was in my late 20s. I had worked for a law firm since I was 18 years old. And I had a seatmate. So like we shared a partition at our desks. And one day we just got talking about writing and mystery. We were both mystery loving fans. And she said, hey, I'd really want to write a book someday. And I said, yeah, that sounds like it'd be kind of fun. And, you know, I'm in my late 20s. This sounds fun. What the heck? And so she and I actually, during our lunch hours, spent time writing a book together.
No way.
And, yeah, so it was very fun. That it didn't go anywhere. But I had the writing bug from that point forward. And so I went on to write 2 more novels on my own. And I wrote up until the time I was about 35. And I wrote the book Derailed, which was book 1 in my series, in 1999, which was the year right before I started a company. So in 2000, I set the books aside, and my husband and I opened a pet related industry type of business. And I came back to my writing in 2016. I picked up that book from 1999, edited it. And that's the one that was published. And then book 2, Denied, is the book 2 of that series.
So I mean, but what inspired you then after all those years did you just like stumble on the manuscript, or did you read something? What was it?
I was sad to leave it when I had to set it aside, but I was opening a retail store, and retail stores are, 10 to 7 every day at least. And of course we were self-employed. So, those days were really more like 8 to 8 or 8 to 10 at night. It was like, there was no creative energy left for a book. So every so often I'd see it up in the closet and yearn for the day I had time to actually come back to my writing, but I just didn't have time. And then in 2015, late 2015, we sold the retail part of our company. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, I have some time on my hands. And that's when I pulled it out of the cabinet and started editing. Yep.
Yeah. So that was 2016. So that took you about 4 years to revise it and get it ready?
Well, I entered it into a contest in 2016. Yeah. So, and I was Pitch Wars mentee. Yeah. So I got chosen as one of the 120 people that were chosen to be mentored by published authors. And it was still a long journey after that. It still took more edits. It took more rejection. I had 100 rejections on my first book.
That is insane. I bet
lucky I'm tenacious. I don't give up easy. And then I finally got the agent, and then I got the book deal. And, and I think I was going to say too, I turned 50 back at that point too. And I think that was another pivot point for me too, because I think, there's certain stages of your life you're ready to get back to your creativity. And that was part of it too for my, coming back to my writing.
Yeah. So you had the mentorship. Well, first of all, I'm going to say, 100 rejections on that book. Yes. And that book, Denied, is nominated for an Agatha, a Lefty, and an Anthony.
It is.
So that's kind of like the triple crown of book awards.
I know. I kind of, there's that part of you that wants to go back and say, you were wrong. You should have.
You dummies. Yeah, this could have been you. Yeah.
But you don't do that. Of course, you never do that. But
No, but you put them in a book and then you kill them later.
That's right.
A bit like a cruise ship of publishers goes down somewhere. Yeah. So I bet there are people who are watching who are writers too, or who have projects that they have had in the closet and are getting back out. Did you have, you had the mentorship when you got into the Pitch Fest, but were there other writers that you knew, like were there groups, or were you pretty much just doing this on your own?
When I was writing in my late 20s to early 30s, I actually belonged to a critique group we called ourselves the little coffee chat group, and we met every Monday at a coffee spot, and we would critique each other's work. And that was lovely. But when I came back 16 years later, all those people were gone. They'd either moved out of the area, they stopped writing, things had changed. So I absolutely knew nobody in writing when I came back. And so finding Pitch Wars and the community from that is really what started my connecting to other writers as time went on. And gosh, now almost 5 years later, you know, I know so many wonderful writers. It's been a lot of fun. So
yeah, I think book people are the best people.
They are,
for sure. So, okay, then my other question is, why did you choose a PI novel, or was it a conscious choice? I mean, I guess you started that long ago when you were working in a law office, so maybe that's what was around. I don't know why. Why was it?
Well,
yeah, I know.
Mary Higgins Clark was my first love, and so my first novels were more along the lines of, you know, suspense, amateur, sleuthing type of thing. But somewhere along in there, I found Sue Grafton and Janet Ivanovich, and I loved Stephanie Plum, and I loved Kinsey Milhone. And so when I decided I really wanted to write PI, it was part of it was because how much I loved the characters of those particular novels. And so I thought, hey, I think I could come up with a cool PI. And so that's what we did. That's what I did. I just kind of created her and then thought about how I wanted her to be different than the other PIs out there, and just went with that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking now, realizing it from 1999 to now, I bet you had to do a lot of stuff with like cell phones and GPS and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, so different. Yeah, you know, because there wasn't social media back in 1999. So when I first wrote it, now you can check Facebook and see where people are, you know, tweeting and where they're going or posting where they're at. And, you know, as a PI, or like for Kelly, she was a process server primarily in the beginning. You know, that's how she tracked down some of her people. Like they'd be posting where they were and she'd be right behind them. So
yeah, people have no idea. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so one of the things I really, like I said, when I was reading Denied, I'll put this up one more time so you can see it, not forget it. There were a couple things that really struck me about it. I mean, one was that it just was really gripping storytelling. It's like you just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then another one was the characters just really stood out to me as being real and full. And there was a lot of truth in how those characters were. I mean, you can tell a character who just they feel true. Like there's something when you read about them, you relate to them. And so, but let's start with let's start with the very beginning. And then I wonder if you would read a little bit from a very important beginning chapter where she finds something in the garbage can. And then you guys who are listening, tell me if you would not keep reading that book to find out what happened once you heard this part.
All right, here we go. Let's see. So I flipped through the rest of the contents. Nothing jumped out to give me a clear direction of Vince's whereabouts. She has found a credit card statement is where this has come from. No travel agency information, only more losing tickets and a credit card statement dated last month. I scanned the purchases for major buys, but gas stations and restaurants were the bulk, including a place called the Turf Club in Portland. Sounded swanky and by the amount expensive. The card was maxed at its $2,000 limit and current. As of last month anyway, Vince had been making his minimum payment on the balance. I laid the statement out on the counter and took a photo, capturing the card number and other charges for quick reference before stuffing it back into its envelope. Slipping the phone into my jacket, I headed to the fridge. The contents might hold a clue as to when Vince was last home. Until now, I hadn't noticed the smell of something sweet and rotting in the air. Holding my breath, I opened the fridge door to a 6-pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon beer on the top shelf, a half-gallon of recently expired milk in the door, and a picked-over chicken carcass sealed in a plastic bag. A typical sparse bachelor's fridge. I stuck my nose closer, steeling myself, and sniffed. Whatever the odor, the fridge wasn't the source. A pile of dirty dishes teetered in the sink, but that didn't seem to be the origin either. The garbage? It had to be. I opened the cupboard underneath the sink and jumped back. Maggots swarmed around the edges of the lined can. My stomach flipped in protest. The stench assaulted my nose, making my eyes water. The skin crawled on my arms and back. I forced myself to lean in and inspect the wiggling worms. They were centered around a sausage-sized piece of decaying meat in the can, or I thought that until I looked closer. It was meat, but not the grocery store kind. It was a finger.
And so now everybody, let's have some dinner. But it comes out, I mean, when you're reading, you'll see this happens right in the beginning, so we're not giving anything away really. But, and the book is not, I'll have to say too, for those of you like, I don't really want to read things that are super gross. That's as gross as it gets. But it's super suspenseful. So yeah. So then when you were putting together, well, Derailed and Denied, and I know you've written more since then, we can talk about that later. Do you plot it out, or do you just kind of throw out some major markers and go to right to that?
Yeah, so I usually know the end of my story. Like I usually have a feeling that I'm trying to convey throughout the book. And so I usually know the very, very end. And I usually know the crime. Well, I always know the crime. And I know who did it, generally speaking. It hasn't changed too often. But I'm actually what they call a pantser. So I just get in and write. I think best with my fingers moving. And yeah, I surprise myself. Even when I think I know where a story is going, I'll be like, okay, I'll plot out the first, few chapters. Within no time, I've taken a different road, and something much more surprising than what I'd even thought of shows up. And so I just kind of have learned to honor that part of me, that and try not to make myself a plotter, which, because I know that's kind of common. People will be like, well, how can you not plot a mystery novel? It's one step at a time, and then you throw in your twists. Sometimes you go back and put in the twists. But I like to be surprised like my readers. I think it makes for a fresh story as I go.
Well, I mean, it's not like nothing ever gets revised, at least if you're like me. I feel like I spend at least half the time in revision. Yeah. So there is time to go back and plant your red herrings and your misdirection and things like that.
Yeah, you hope you don't write yourself into a corner that you can't get out of, I suppose. That's kind of that's I guess the downside of being a pantser. But you can always back up the truck and go the next direction. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I've heard it described like some people, it just depends on how your brain works. Like I definitely like plotting, but there's a ton of room in between. Yeah. But I heard it described as some people, if you say you're both inside a biosphere, for some people to get to know the biosphere, they need to be inside it, walk around and feel it. And other people need to be outside and to see the biosphere as a whole. It's just like, it's however your brain works. I think it's really interesting. And so, but you haven't written yourself in any corners that you want to tell us about?
No, I really haven't actually, I mean, there's sometimes during a revision process, I will say, yeah, that seems not needed. It's weighing it down. I think that's the beauty of revising, is that you get to work on that during it. I think the biggest thing is to watch, when you're creating it, your pacing has to be, because pacing is a hard thing to fix. So, if you just go cause and effect, this happened, well, this naturally has to happen next because of that. Usually you can get there without too much problem. So, so far I haven't done it, knock on wood.
Yeah, that's good. And while you were talking, this question popped into my head, and now, and it was such a good writing question too. Oh, so there's some people, some authors I've talked to who they love revision more than they like creation. And some are just like, no, revision kills me. It's got to be, my first draft needs to be close to the end of what I'm doing. Do you have any, do you have a strong feeling either way?
I really don't. I love the creative process of creating a new story, but my brain is constantly creating the next thing. So there is that danger of sometimes I want to get through it so I can get to the next project. So, but I do like to edit. I think that's when you really fill in the characters and color the pages with emotion and responses and that depth that you can't get on a first draft, because the first draft is really about getting the plot in place. And then the revision really is where you make the characters come alive. So it's unnecessary. I know they're out there, those people that can write one draft and they're done. I'm not that person. I'll go through my books at least 5 to 8 times before I feel like it's even ready to go out to my critique partners to read. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, like I said earlier, that I really loved about this book too, were your characters and their relationships. And probably my favorite relationship is between Kelly Pruitt's the main PI for people who might have forgot, and her daughter Mitz. And I know you have a chapter where that relationship is sort of featured. And I know you need to kind of skip around a little bit, not to reveal any important subplot issues. But I wonder if you would just give us a little taste of that.
Little taste of Mitz and Kelly.
and maybe, yeah, exactly. So Kelly is a single mom right now, and Mitz is her one and only daughter, and Mitz is deaf.
Yes.
And probably smarter than she needs to be.
And probably gets smarter as she goes too. All right. I pulled into a snaking line of waiting parents at the Washington School for the Deaf and spotted Mitz sprinting out the front door. She saw my triumph at the same time and aimed for the passenger side, her red curls bouncing behind her and her face beaming like a jack-o'-lantern. I reached over and pushed the door open for her. Mama, she signed, you surprised me. Thought you and me could grab some ice cream before I take you home, Ladybug. Sound good? I signed. She nodded with eyes wide. Can Daddy come too? She pointed to the car 2 spots back. I glanced in my rearview mirror and sure enough, Jeff was there in his Subaru. I ran back to greet him. Came through a minute ago, he said as I questioned him about my text, but I was turning into the school by then. What's your plan? Ice cream. Nice, I'm free and I'll treat. Sounds good. Oh, sorry, okay. So I'll meet you at Benny's. He gave me 2 thumbs up that he pushed away from his body, the sign for follow me. In my triumph, Floyd was greeting Mitz with wet kisses. She squealed and returned his nuzzles. Mitz then turned to signing stories with full animation of playground mishaps and her friend cheating off her test this morning. We pulled into the 50-style malt shop and filed into the small but hustling space full of other kids with their parents who had the same idea. Mitz ordered her usual double-decker Rocky Road with cherry syrup and sprinkles. I went with double peanut butter fudge and let Jeff a scoop of vanilla. Waffle cones in hand, we found a corner booth. Mitz scooted onto the back vinyl seat first, and I joined her. Jeff sat across from us. Mitz gave us the rest of her day's update. She had been deaf since birth, a result of Waardenburg syndrome that came from my father's side. In the beginning, I believed my faulty genes had ruined my girl's life. Instead, Mitz had learned to sign right away. Deafness wasn't a curse. It even did something that talking to each other didn't always achieve. One had to pay attention to converse. While our little group might have its share of problems, communicating wasn't one of them.
Yeah, see, I just think that's so heartwarming. And in case you didn't get it, Floyd's a dog. It's not some really messy person in the back seat.
It's true. But he drools a lot, but you know, that's Floyd.
Yeah, you know, you're a basset hound, that happens. So I wonder if you could talk about your writing process then a little bit. Like, are you a morning writer? Do you write at night? Do you binge write? What do you do?
I'm a creature of routine. So I'm a morning writer and always have been. When I was working at the law firms, I was up at 5:30 and I would put in a couple of hours before I had to get to the office. And I found that just showing up every day was how I consistently got the words in. Being self-employed, you know, gave me a little more leeway, but I still am a morning person. I'm out by 9. So, you know, I have to get my writing in early in the day. And I make sure that I put in 2 to 4 hours every single day, except for Sundays. I try to keep at least one day off. And yeah, very consistent. And I just find that I'm able to create books at a fairly good pace that way. And it keeps my brain inside the story. If I don't do it every day, then I lose track of where I'm at. So keeps me on it.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Do you write to a word count, or you just keep it to a certain amount of time a day and that's good enough?
Yeah, I try to make 2,000 words a day, which is, you know, the equivalent of 8 to 10 pages, you know, depending if it's heavy dialogue or heavy description. And, you know, and then I have a weekly goal. So some days are a little bit less, and it just depends if I'm in the middle of a manuscript or not. So yeah, and how quick I feel like I want to get through it. So
yeah, and revision is not, I mean, you can't really do a word count with revision so much. I mean, maybe or pages or something.
Yeah, chunks of pages, or I just, I try not to really put a timeline on the edit stuff. I just show up and put the time in, and then it's done when it's done at that point, right? Because sometimes a chapter, you'll just think it will take you a few minutes, and you'll spend hours on just a few pages, just getting the sentence structure right, or the plot right, or oh shoot, I put this in here. Now I have to go back 4 chapters and rewrite this section to make this section work with that. So it's, you're constantly going back and forth.
And some days it seems like are hot days for writing, where it just, comes out, and some days just are a little bit slower. At least that's what I find.
Yeah, you have to honor the process. You can't force it, but I think routine is what keeps you at least engaged in it, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
So you thought about writing for a long time. I mean, you started way back. Oh, so the person on the other side of the cubicle wall, what happened with her? Did she ever publish anything?
She didn't, that I know of. That was kind of a friendship after I kind of started my companies. And she continued in law and I was in Vancouver. The friendship didn't quite stay. So I don't really know what happened to her after all that time, unfortunately.
We'll just pretend like she's writing if she wants to. Here's right there. Okay, yeah. So you thought about, you started writing early, you got sidetracked by business, you came back to it. So now that you have books out and a contract with another publisher for another series, and then I know beyond that, you still have other ideas, what surprises you the most about the writing life? Like, what did you think it was going to be like to be a published author? And then how does reality compare to that?
Well, I think you get the idea that when a publisher takes your book, that, it's ready to go. And I think the most surprising was how many more times I had to edit the book, even after it was purchased, even after the contract was signed. It was revised several times. And I think a little bit too, that you have to give up some creative control. That was different. I had characters a certain way that I wanted them, but in my experience with my publisher, I had to pull Kelly back a little bit. She was a little more snarkier originally. And my publisher wanted her pulled back a little bit. So, so it's a compromise. When you're traditionally published, ultimately it's what the publisher wants. And so that was different than what I expected, but not in a bad way. I don't put a lot of ego into my work. I mean, I try to write a really good story. And I'm not above trying to make it better. So if somebody sees that it needs to be different or better because they think it'll work better, I'll go with that. So, and you have to be flexible to be traditionally published because you don't have a lot of control of things. So
did you have visions like the author in Murder, She Wrote, where people would be sending you letters all the time and you would be going to martini parties in Greenwich Village or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I'm an introvert. So that stuff would scare me too much. No, I didn't really have any of those. I think I thought that I would just get to write more and more and more. And that part's been fun. And that part's been true. The writing part is what you do get to control, what you write, how many books you write, and that part is what I love the most about the publishing and writing journey, is just creating new stories.
It's not the social media and writing blog posts. And oops, this cat in my lap decides she wants to chew on my sequins.
No, I love talking stories. So my favorite thing to do is just meet with small groups of people, or just, and just talk story, and talk characters and that. So I really enjoy those types of interactions. I love my readers, and I love getting, emails from them and interacting with them that way. So
do you do book clubs? I mean, if somebody got in touch with you and said they had a book club.
Yes, actually I do. In fact, I can see a couple people here from a book club that I met at a book club that have joined us tonight. So yeah, no, I do. I love it. So, and I just think that's great because it's really, you can get to know each other and have one-on-one conversations and, as a group, and get to talk about the story or just writing. And it's good. I like it. The Zoom world has not been a bad thing really in some ways.
I know, I agree. Because when you're writing, you're just looking at your screen and you're making up all these worlds, and then you get them out and you have an audience of, you know, an editor, and but it seems really narrow. And then to have people send you notes, asking questions about your characters or making comments or expressing opinions is pretty wild.
It is, yeah.
That's pretty.
I get ones that they're like, so Kelly and Kyle, what's happening there? Or I want this to happen in your next book. You know, but it's kind of fun. I mean, to have people engaged in your stories to that level is author goals, really. I mean, you want people thinking about your characters after they finish the book. That's,
I was once, I worked 2 days retail to support my lavish author life. And I was in the store, and this group of women came in, 4 women from Linwood, and they somehow knew that I wrote a particular series, this Vintage Clothing Mysteries. And one of them said, so Joanna and Paul, are they going to stay together or what? And it just blew me away. I said, well, I don't know. What do you think? And one of them said, well, she's not going to change for him, so it's going to have to be him.
Oh, I love it. I mean, that's so gratifying, right?
It is. It's really wild. Yeah. So another thing that, okay, so this goes on, I'm just repeating myself here, but one of the things I really loved about your writing style and how that worked with the book was how you built suspense, and how you could take sort of a situation, a small but uncertain situation, and really build a lot of suspense into it. There's one situation where Kelly is stuck in a car, and I remember I read it as a reader, but a little bit of my author brain in the back was going at the same time. It was like, wow, she really worked on making this thing suspenseful, and it is working. So I wonder if you could share a little bit about that and say, you know, anything you want to say about that.
Okay. Well, so she's been in the car for a little bit at this point of where I'm going to start reading, but yeah, she was unexpectedly thrown into a vehicle by people in uniform. And she's like, I kicked against the door twice before my Fitbit vibrated with a caller ID notification from my phone that was in my car. I craned my neck around to see an unfamiliar Oregon cell number scrolling across my wrist. There was nothing I could do but watch the call disappear. I laid back on the bench, the hard plastic grinding into my shoulder blades, and pushed images of waterfalls from my mind. Floyd would need to get out soon if he hadn't already gone potty. He was a good boy, though. He'd hold out if possible. Could I? What was Mitz doing tonight? Homework was my best guess. I should have taken a picture of her the last time we were together. Although the last time she stormed off. I had a knack for upsetting people, obviously. A tear ran out of my eye, feeling sorry for myself. I didn't have time for this. I pressed my cheek against the molded seat and crossed my legs. How many people had sat here before me? Someone had probably thrown up in here at least once, or worse. Dark spots dotted the floorboard. Was that dried blood? I bolted upright. Why was there blood on the floor? I wanted out, a hot shower, a cup of coffee, and a bathroom, not in that order. This was ridiculous. I threw my shoulder against the passenger door, feeling angrier with every hit. My fourth heave landed me on the sidewalk in a lump and looking up at No Name. Shoot.
No Name is the officer who has been, ridiculously. If he had a name, it would be bad words. He was not good. So yeah, thanks for reading that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping some of this is going to inspire people to pick up the book. But I wonder at this point, so it looks like we have a little time left, and it looks, I see 8 marks here, but I wonder, should I do questions, or Michael, do you want to do any?
I'm happy to read the questions. Yeah.
Okay, great.
We got a couple in here, I noticed. Some people saying, love that. And always wondered how authors got their full story developed, said Carrie. And Diane has a question. Because of Kelly's job, do you contact experts, police, etc., to know what she can and can't do? If so, how did you find them?
So I definitely talk to experts. So in particular, I attended a Sisters in Crime meeting, and I'm actually one of the vice presidents of our local chapter. But at the time I was attending a local chapter, and one of the officers, he was a homicide detective, a cold case, and he was doing a presentation. And the minute he was done, I just went right up and said, hey, do you consult? And I have like a million questions. And he gave me his card, and he's been my resource for the last several years now. So anytime I have questions, I shoot them off to that gentleman, and he shoots back some more questions. I'm also lucky enough to have my husband's uncle was a former homicide detective out of Washington County. So I also have that. And I used to work for lawyers. So, you know, if I have legal questions, I shoot them off an email. So I have some great resources when I need to. But I think that's so important for having an authentic story is.
No, I want to, speaking of the authenticity, I want to ask, was that detective, your husband's uncle, Detective Cooney by chance?
Well, yes, actually that is his name in real life.
There's a character in Denied. So I'm just, you know.
It was a nod to my uncle. Yes.
Okay. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. Joe Ben Wittenberg wants to know, how many more Kelly books do you plan to write?
Well, I'm slated for next year, May 2022, Deceived will be out. It's actually been approved by the publisher, and it's heading off to, you know, proofreading and all that fun stuff as it moves through the process. And then I'm moving on to a new series for a little bit, but the publisher has already been in conversation with more. So you never say never. I don't know yet, but definitely another one for sure.
Cool. And do you have that new series outlined and everything? Like, do you know the characters are and all that? And you're...
Yeah, I've actually sold it to Level Best Books. They bought it in a 2-book deal, and it will be a different character. I'm featuring a small town sheriff, Jax Turner, and it's set down at the Oregon coast at the fictional town of Misty Pines. And that book will be coming out in September 2022, and Deadly Tides will be the follow-up novel. So it's a duology. So
all right, well, you got all these books lined up for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I already got them ready. And well, not the second book isn't written yet, but the first one. Not that far ahead.
But isn't there another project you're working on too? It seems to me that you've got some other idea floating out there.
Well, I'm actually querying right now for a standalone, What Lies Unseen. And I'm working to get a new agent with that. And I'm like within days, about 15 pages of finishing up another standalone, which features a paralegal, which I'm really excited about because of all my years in legal. I'm actually finally writing a character that's somebody I can really kind of relate to myself, like for what I used to do. I was secretary, but also did some paralegal duties. And that one is where her boss is dead and her sister is missing, and the two are inextricably linked. So that one's kind of fun, and I'm almost done with that book. So
with all of these, that sounds really good. With all of these characters, the protagonists, do you see a similarity? Like, are you just really diverging, or is there something that's at the core that's kind of similar about your protagonists?
All of my protagonists, you know, family is always going to be at the core, I think, of, you know, they're working out family issues, or you know, I think that has kind of a resonance all the way through. Redemption is kind of a theme that I work into my novels a lot of times. And kind of coming out of people's shadows, standing on their own. So I think there's some definite, you know, issues that kind of cross, but they each have their own set of stuff. You know, they're definitely, I work really hard to keep them separate, because that's always a fear, right? That you're going to start writing characters that sound too much alike, right? But I think there's always going to be general themes, because themes are always, they're born out of the author, you know, writing what they're working through on some levels, I think. And I have a real interest in relationships and how they work, and you know, working on that. So
I think a lot of readers do too. So that's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, I butted in there, Michael.
That's great. Do we have other questions? And you're welcome to just pop on and ask them. You know, you can unmute yourself or turn on your video and ask questions live, or feel free to type more questions in. Happy to read them. Comments.
Everybody's
concerns.
probably getting ice cream after the ice cream scene that Mary read.
Peanut butter fudge.
Sounds really good.
Nice.
Kelly loves her peanut butter. So, you know, you have to know everything's about peanut butter.
You know, is there anything you have wanted to write in a character that you just felt like it's not, you know, like, oh, maybe this won't be what receives? Is there anything that's been really tempting to write, or something that just seems like way different, so you haven't approached it?
You know, I'm really writing what I love to read. So not really. I mean, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about this the other day. You know, I love to read mystery. I love to watch romantic comedy. And sometimes there's that part of me that thinks it'd be kind of fun to write a screenplay, actually, not so much a novel, but I have screenplay ideas because, you know, I'm kind of a visual person. And so I think that would be kind of fun. But as far as writing novels, I just love mystery and suspense and puzzles, you know. And when you think about it, every genre really is a mystery at its core, right? Whether, you know, will the boy get the girl, or, you know, will the spaceship be eaten by an alien? I mean, it's always a question, right? It's a mystery, right, that has to be answered. And so I have just always found myself just really into the actual mystery and the puzzle. And even when I've tried to write other things, I kind of laugh about it because there always ends up a dead body at some point in the book. Even when I try to start writing something else, it's like, I just want to have somebody dead. I don't know why. I don't know. Too many years in law. I don't know.
So. We do have another question from Diane. Can you tell us about Deceived?
Yeah.
The third book in the series. Well, it's a little bit different. It's a social cause that Kelly is taking on. She's actually going to be going undercover in a woman's homeless shelter. Her client, who is actually a long-time client of her father's firm, has hired her to go in and find out who's dealing the drugs and inside the shelter, because his granddaughter, who was a recovering addict and homeless herself, has gone missing. So he thinks that by kind of finding that out, she will come out of hiding. He kind of thinks she's in hiding. And so it's a completely different book, and it's going to be a lot of fun because it's bringing in a lot of different women relationships. The mother and daughter theme is really heavy in Deceived, and that mothers can look very different. So it's going to be fun. It's definitely got a lot of moving parts to it, but I'm very, very excited about the next book.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, Karenza has a question. Have you thought about writing a crossover with Kelly and Jax working together?
Ooh.
Now you are.
I hadn't, but you know, that could work. Yeah, you never know. Yeah. Huh. Well, things to think about, Karenza. Thank you.
It happened here.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your launch of this book. It's really wonderful. It was such a pleasure to read it. I hope lots of people are going to get a chance to do it. And I also just want to put in one more reminder that if you order Denied, then through Annie Bloom's books, you get this hand delivered from Hawaii bookmark. I feel like I should be selling those things in the fair, like a guy who's like spinning around the salad things. And then it also, get yourself a Bait and Witch, and you get a free advance review copy. None of your friends have it, of 7-Year Witch.
And it's a fun series.
Through Annie Bloom's books.
I just put the link back in the chat so you guys can just click on that, do one-stop shopping for both of those books. You get that.
And
cool
if you want them autographed to a certain person, I'm happy to sign. And but if you want to keep it plain so you can resell the Powells, there's nothing more irritating than finding your book in a used bookstore inscribed to somebody else.
Oh man. Yeah, don't do that.
No, that's not cool.
All right.
I appreciated this. This has been great.
Thank you guys. It's really great to have you here, and everyone in the audience too. Really wonderful.
Thank you everybody for coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've appreciated everyone and the great questions. Thank you.
We're going to invite one last person, Vicki, to come in here. And hi, Vicki. Welcome. We are just wrapping up the event, so you can say goodnight to Mary and Angela as you enter the room. Yes, again, thank you to everyone who came tonight. It was really great. And buy the books.
Yes,
they would love it.
I think you'll enjoy it. And Michael will have signed copies too. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Good night, everyone.
See everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Aloha.
Bye.